Hi everyone, my name's Kat, I write books and stuff, and this is my YouTube channel. Okay, so it's the first week of March, which means that it's time to look back over what I was reading, writing and watching in February. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to go over was what I was reading in February. I started off the month reading Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and I spoke a little bit about this in my wrap-up for January because I actually started it in January. Heart of Darkness is a novel, 19th century novel, written by Joseph Conrad. I'm just going to read the back cover for you because it might sort of help a little bit with what this is about. So Heart of Darkness is tells of Marlowe's perilous journey up the Congo River to relieve his employer's agent, the renowned and formidable Mr. Kurtz. What he sees on his journey and his eventual encounter with Kurtz horrify and perplex him and call into question the very bases of civilization and human nature. So yeah, it's quite an interesting book. One of the things that I'd forgotten about, because this of course, as I mentioned in my previous wrap-up, is my second time of reading this book. The first time I read it was for university. I read it as part of my literature degree. And one of the things that I found most interesting, or that I'd forgotten about, was the way that it's told. It's literally Marlowe himself speaking throughout the book. So there's a very clear sense of character and voice. And I think that makes it actually very powerful. One of the things that I remember enjoying particularly about it on the first reading was how intense it is and how atmospheric it is. And it really didn't lose any of that. I'd say it probably on the second reading lost a little bit of impact because I found it very heavy going. Most of what I've been reading in recent years is contemporary. It's, you know, sort of modern stuff, non-fiction, fiction as well, and also, you know, sort of science fiction, fantasy and thriller and what have you. So almost all of my reading since I finished my degree is very modern, and as a result it meant that going back to the 19th century language and style was actually quite difficult. And it did kind of detract, so it's a bit of a shame really, because I remember reading it the first time, and because I was in that mindset, I was reading 19th century literature at the time. I'd already done some Jane Austen and all sorts. Because I was already in that mindset, it was a lot easier to read, which means that this second time around, as I say, I feel like it did lose a little bit of that impact. That's not to say that it's not still impactful or worthwhile reading. You might wonder why I decided to reread this, particularly having read it so long ago and having read it for university. And the reason why I came back to it was because of another YouTuber, booktuber in fact, a person called Ashley, who has the channel A Frolic Through Fiction. And she read this. She's doing her literature degree at the moment, and she read it I think last year. And she really didn't like it, and one of the main reasons why she didn't like it was because she thought it was racist. But yeah, you know, I thought I would give this another read to see what I thought about it, because that wasn't a takeaway for me on the first reading of it. It wasn't like I read it and thought, wow, this is extraordinarily racist. And actually, even coming back to it with that mindset, with that question in my mind of is this racist? How racist is it? I actually don't feel that it's certainly not the most racist thing I've read in 19th century literature. I'd say that it's more upfront about racism and classism as well. But it's not, that's kind of the point of the story. I feel like having reread it, that actually the character Marlowe is rather less racist than would have been typical in the 19th century. You know, some of the passages in the book talk with a certain degree of admiration about the kind of the local culture and the local society. I feel like we have to accept that 19th century literature, or literature from the past, is going to be racist, or it's going to have certain things that we think of differently in this day and age. And yeah, for some people that is going to really detract from their enjoyment of something like this. But you have to accept that that's part of that society. And the point, I think, should always be, what does this contribute? And I think still now, even though it's however many, I think this was 1877 or something that this was written in, so it's well over 100 years since it was written and published. Even after all that time, I think we still ask questions of society and culture and civilization that are relevant in that story. You know, the question for me is, when I read it, or when I read it, the question was, what is civilization and how civilized are we really? So the other thing that I've been reading in February is another book that I've returned to. So I started this months and months and months ago, and then I put it to one side, read something else, read some other things, started Heart of Darkness, and what have you. So this was me kind of picking this back up because I need to finish it, and that is Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin. So I started this literally months and months and months ago. You'll know what this is. It's Game of Thrones. It's the second book in the series. And I think actually the main reason why I stopped reading it was because my father-in-law wanted to read it, and therefore I said okay, because I mark my pages on Goodreads, so I knew I could return to it. As you can see, I'm a little ways through it. I'm not doing very well. Yeah, finding time to read sometimes is a bit of a challenge. You can probably also see, I don't know, my father-in-law dog-eared the edge of this, which is kind of annoying since I bought him his own copy for Christmas. But never mind, we forgive him because we love him. But yeah, so this is what I'm reading at the moment. I'm hoping to have this finished in the next couple of weeks, and then move on to maybe some non-fiction or something like that. So we'll talk more about this when we get to March. March is wrap up, April. So there's one other thing that I want to talk about from the reading perspective, although I don't really class this as reading, but I'm listening to an audiobook. The audiobook is Nightblade by Garrett Robinson. Garrett has his own YouTube channel, which I'll link down below. Yeah, I always have this debate. People say that they're reading something and they're listening to an audiobook, and in my head that's not reading. But I don't really have anywhere else to fit it into this, because otherwise it would be reading, writing, watching, listening. Yeah, it gets complicated. So we'll just include this in reading. It is a novel. Basically, Garrett Robinson and his wife Megan have decided to release Nightblade, the audiobook, in serialized form on a podcast. So the title of the podcast is the Nightblade Podcast, and again I'll put a link to that down below as well, so that you can go and check it out. It's up to chapter 8, I think. I finished listening to chapter 8 this morning. I'm really enjoying it. It's a kind of it's a epic fantasy book, and it's the first book in a series written by Garrett. You'll find it on Amazon. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can download it for free as well and read it. You can also obviously download the audiobook if you want to do that, or you can listen to the podcast. I am having a great time. I'm really enjoying listening to this. I can't wait for the next one. Everyone that gets released, it's the first. I'm in a hurry to listen to it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to being able to talk more about that and to talk more about the story. Really, it's just kind of getting going at the moment. So the main character is a girl called Lauren, who has run away from home. She is from a sort of farming village, and she is abused by her mother and father. Mainly by her father, but it appears that her mother lets it happen anyway, is fully aware of it. So she's made good her escape. She encounters a wizard called Zane and runs off with him, basically thinking that he is going to be her saving grace, her saviour. Needless to say, not so much. But yeah, so I'm only 8 chapters in. I'm really enjoying it. Check it out if you want to know more, if you want to listen to it. It's free, so you can't do better than that. So what have I been watching in February? Basically, there's just a couple of things that I want to mention. I've watched a fair bit of stuff, either on Netflix or on Sky or whatever. But there's two things specifically that I want to mention. One is The Haunting of Hill House. This is the series that's on Netflix. Obviously, The Haunting of Hill House has been done to death. There's, I think, 4 or 5 different another TV series. It started out as a book. I love this story. The Haunting of Hill House is a story. Honestly, I have enjoyed every incarnation of it. And this is different again, and it's absolutely fantastic, the series that's on Netflix. Basically, it is the story of a haunted house. It's a family who buy the house, they move there, and then shit happens. As you can imagine, this is kind of haunty, creepy shit. But there's very few things that I've watched, particularly in recent years, that have left me feeling quite so creeped out as this series. To the extent that I started watching it with a friend, and she went travelling in January, and I had to stop watching it for the whole of January and then go back to it in February to finish it off. And oh my god, I was not disappointed. It is intense, it is dark, it is well developed scares that creep up on you, and you know, that kind of like half seen, half heard. You're not sure if it's a haunting, you're not sure if it's a ghost. It's very creepy, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. One of the things that really stood out for me though with this particular series, this particular telling of The Haunting of Hill House, is the characters. So this story centers around a single family. So the family is mum, dad, and there's twins. There's one of the twins is a boy. There's another boy, and then there's another girl. So I think it's like 4 kids. Pretty sure it's 4 kids. So this centers around a family, mum, dad, and 4 kids who move to this house. They're gonna, you know, fix it up and then sell it and move on. This is what they do. They move around a lot. They buy houses. They do them up, and this is so that they can fund their dream house. However, what you end up with, this is as much the story of the house, this is as much the story of the family as it is the story of the house. So you get this kind of ghost story about the house and the things that went on there, and you're trying to understand what happened, but then on the other side you're also getting the story of this very broken family. So, you know, you kind of come into it when they're all grown up, and you know, mum's died and the kids are kind of mostly estranged from their father, and don't necessarily have good relationships with each other. And this is kind of their story as much as it is the story about the house. And it was so effective. You know, it was horror, but it was real horror, because it was the horror of a dysfunctional family, the horror of things that happen to us, that we do to ourselves and that we do to each other. You know, it was how we tell lies to each other, and how that breaks us apart and damages our relationships. And then it was also kind of a story of healing. And yeah, God, I could watch it again. I could literally just sit and binge watch it all over again. It was that good. You've got to check it out if you haven't already. Absolutely fantastic. And good news as well is that I think, if I'm right, they have renewed this, Netflix have renewed it for a second series, which will be a different haunting and a different family. But obviously they'll be seeking to do something similar. And if that happens, I can't wait. I literally can't wait. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is Avengers Infinity War. Now, I know I am so late to the party on this. God, I can't even remember when it was out. I didn't go to see it at the cinema. I think I watched it on like Channel 4 or something like that. I don't even know what channel it was on. But anyway, I did watch it. And yeah, the main reason why I didn't go to see it at the cinema is because, you know, superheroes. It's so done. It's so done. It's like not even last year. Superheroes are so kind of 10 years ago now. Is anybody else getting really sick of superhero movies? It was alright. I do kind of like the what am I saying? I kind of love the action genre, actually. I really enjoy action movies and just stuff that you can watch and you don't have to engage your brain or have a really good think about. But yeah, Avengers Infinity War. It was very pretty. Yeah, I suppose the story was alright, but spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, the ending is not an ending. I've got to say, this is the most irritating thing about this movie, is the fact that I sat there for what, like 2.5 hours? Because it's like really friggin' long. I sat there and I watched this thing and I got to the end and then went, is that it? Really? Oh dear. So yeah, not loving Infinity War. Really annoyed that I'm gonna now watch another movie that's probably gonna be another 3 hours of my life that I can't spare. Oh Lord, Marvel, stop, just stop. Let's finish up now, having done reading and having done watching, with writing. Yeah. In February, I wrote a grand total of 3,010 words. 3,010. That was 3 hours in the chair. That is, pardon my language, abysmal. You know, it's difficult because on the one hand, I really want to beat myself over the head with a stick. But at the same time, you know, shit happens. I spent the first sort of few days of the month figuring out where the story needed to go, because you might remember at the end of January I hit a bit of a roadblock. I got to the end of January and realised that I really needed to rework some of my outline, because I didn't have a clear idea about where the story needed to go next or where it was going to go next. And as a result, I kind of had to stop, do some outlining, do some more work on that, do some brainstorming and write some notes, come up with the rest of the plan, and then get back into it. And actually, I then did, after a few days at the start of the month, managed to get some writing done. And I think I did about 1 hour and 15 minutes in one session, 1 hour and 10 minutes in another session. I only managed about half an hour as well in another session. But obviously then, you know, life happens. My plan is that I need to finish this draft, and I mean, I absolutely can't let this slip any further. I need to finish this draft by the end of March. The reason for that is because I have another project that I need to get back to. I can give myself a month in April to do work on that. I'd hoped that I'd have more like 6 weeks to do the work on that I need to do to get it ready for the next stage, but I should be okay as long as I get this draft finished by the end of March. So yeah, that is what I have been reading, writing and watching in February. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and obviously share the video, share it online on Twitter and Facebook, so that your friends and family that you think might be interested in it get to see it as well. I'd love it if you'd leave a comment down below. Just say hi. Let me know what you've been up to. What have you been reading, writing and watching during February? I'd especially love to know if anybody else out there has just had it with superhero movies, because then I won't feel quite so alone. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye! So the other thing that I was reading, or have been reading in February, is another... We'll do that again.